All right, take it away, Laura.
Good evening and welcome to Story Hour. I'm tonight's host, Laura Blackwell. My charming co-host, Daniel Marcus, started Story Hour, over a year ago now. And it has just been a wonderful haven for me and some of our regulars every Wednesday to come and sit around this little virtual campfire and share our stories together. So welcome back to those returning and welcome to those of you joining us for the first time. As always, we have two writers reading for their favorite nonprofits. Tonight's readers are Shingai Njeri Kagunda and Nancy Jane Moore. If you are fortunate enough to help others during this time, please continue a donation to tonight's featured nonprofits, Trans and Queer Fund KE and Empowerment Self-Defense Global. Shingai Njeri Kagunda is reading for Trans and Queer Fund KE. Trans and Queer Fund KE wants to connect people with non-monetary resources to trans and queer people in Kenya who are in need of goods and services. Trans and Queer Fund KE welcomes requests and offers for everything from furniture to temporary housing, from professional development services to therapy to an Uber Eats meal. You can learn more at linktree/trans.queer.fund_KE. I'll drop that link so that you don't necessarily have to memorize it. And do keep an eye on them. There's always some talk with international organizations about whether they might start being able to accept international funds as well, and other ways for us to help internationally. So it's a good one for us to keep an eye on, even for those of us who aren't in Kenya at the very moment. Nancy Jane Moore is reading for Empowerment Self-Defense Global. ESD Global is a US-based nonprofit organization that envisions a world where people can live safe, violence-free lives. ESD Global is dedicated to making empowerment self-defense, ESD for short, accessible around the world through increasing public awareness of its profound benefits, providing instructor trainings to leaders who teach ESD in their communities, supporting research, and providing program grants. Their mission is to establish empowerment self-defense as a key primary violence prevention strategy for women and vulnerable populations. You can learn more at esdglobalselfdefense.org. And I see I've also got another note about Trans and Queer Fund KE. You can also send items online. So that is a way that we can help internationally there as well. So we actually have two international organizations this time, which is pretty cool. If you are here on Zoom, feel free to leave your camera on. It can be really nice for our readers to see the people they're reading to. And chime in on the text chat if you like on Zoom. If you're joining us on Facebook, thank you. We're really glad you're here, but we're not seeing your messages in real time. So, sorry. So our first reader tonight is Shingai Njeri Kagunda. Shingai Njeri Kagunda is a storyteller, teacher, student, and Black speculative fiction writer who has been published in Omenana, Fantasy Magazine, Fractured Lit, and Choreo magazine. Shingai's novella, And This Is How to Stay Alive, is set to be published by Neon Hemlock, very nice, in October 2020. She is the co-founder of Voodoo Knots, a member of Clarion Ghost Class 2020, and the co-editor of Podcastle Magazine 2021. Shingai, welcome.
Thank you so much, Laura. Thank you so much for having me here. I'm very grateful to be here and very excited about reading my story tonight. I am going to be reading a short story that was actually published in Choreo. So, and it is a dedication to Wangari Maathai, who was a brilliant activist and advocate for our trees and forests in Kenya and around the world. Yes. And I will get right into it. It's called A Brief History of Things Lost and Found. 2006, the tree started talking to Muta when she was 13. Her mother took her on Sunday walks religiously after church while Baba was out drinking with his friends. This was a little thing her mother told her. Most people do not see the trees. They just see past them, and the trees in turn just see past you. Muta looked at her mother's very light brown face with big dark eyes and made sure to listen to every word because she knew that her mother knew everything. And if she missed anything, she would move back a little closer to knowing nothing. Except the one time when she was telling the little muscles in her ears to stretch and listen harder to her mother's explanation about the origin of the fever tree, also known as Antkaik Santonjan. Not really, but her mother had said the English words so fast, they sounded like letters forced together without being choreographed properly. Then this one time, while she was unscrambling the letters of the proper name of the fever tree and internally chiding her ears for not lengthening enough to hear Mama properly, a moringa spoke to her. Nekioreda. Huh? Muta asked. How what? Muta's mother responded, wondering at this child of hers who had grown in ways she could not fully fathom. Muta was confused. Maybe she was hearing nothing more than the wind's whispers. After a moment, her mother continued speaking about the roots of the fever tree. Muta heard a chuckle, then a chortle. The moringa asked again, this time in English. What is it that you want with that one? Us, we are more interesting than the prickly fever. This was when Muta was 13, on a Sunday, listening to her mother talk about how fever trees evolved thorns that grew to protect themselves and conserve water. This is when the trees began talking to Muta. But what you need to know is that that was then, and this is now, and now the trees have stopped talking to Muta. A little history of Karura Forest. In 1932, we measured 1,663 hectares, which for those of you who do not understand the language of our colonial history is 2,627 acres. Proud, towering, volatile, beautiful, Nairobi would not be the green city under the sun without us. We were its gift. Even when the Wazungu came, we stood. We grew caves to protect the Mau Mau, the ones who knew us to be sacred. We witnessed their blood oaths. We grew their trees of life. The Mugumo could be found in us in abundance. We made this bargain, a promise to hide them if they promised to remember us when they were free, to protect us. Now see. Was it a coincidence that the moringa was the first tree to talk to Muta on that Sunday walk after church with her mother when she was 13? Here's the little thing that Mama told Muta about the moringa oleifera. It is one of the fastest growing drought-resistant trees. Yani, when the rains refuse to fall and the other trees give up, the moringa remains standing, resilient. More than that, it is medicinal, carrying mending vitamins through its veins until even its words sound like healing. So now you must remember this first speaking tree as survivor and healer. Ones that are both are hard to find, but they recognize their own. Mama used to say that she was raising an advocate, like the woman Muta was named for, but even healers sometimes can be broken. A little history of Karura Forest. In 1964, the developer incursions began. You cut us in half. We hid you, freed you, and you cut us in half, teaching those saws to roar so loud that no one would hear our anguish when they tore us down. In 2005, we counted ourselves and we were in your double tongue, 564 hectares and 1,394 acres. We had made a bargain. We kept our end. You broke yours. November 2011. Muta never met Miss Madai, for whom she was named, but she's convinced that her mother had been half in love with the woman. Mama passes away 2 months after Miss Madai, an unexplained stroke. Everyone is surprised that her drunk of a father has outlived her mother, including himself. For a while, Muta commiserates with her father in his drinking binge. This is the closest she has ever been to Baba when they sit together on this side of sadness. She asks him to take her to the forest and he refuses. Muta goes on her own. She whispers to fill the air. Muta and her father argue about how her mother is to be buried. Muta knows she wanted to be wrapped in cassava leaves and then cremated. It is not proper for her to be burned. Her father is unrelenting. He slurs his words as he speaks, skinny as a stick, eyes bloodshot, and somehow still unrelenting. This is where their closeness ends. Muta knew it could only last for so long. She fights, cries, begs. The extended family agrees with Baba. Her mother is to be buried in a coffin like a faithful Kikuyu Christian woman. Muta goes back to the forest filled with rage. You let her die. Now they are going to bury her in the ground. If you were as old as you say, could you not have saved her? The trees do not respond. She looks hard at the dark soil at her feet, then up at the big jacaranda in front of her. She loved you, fought for you, and you did nothing to save her. The jacaranda huffs and blows its leaves away from her as she bangs her fists against its bark. The oak next to it has always been haughty, thinks itself too big to say more than one word to a human. Speak, Muta shouts. I didn't ask you to speak then. Now when I need you, you stay silent? The moringa squeaks. Msichana, how many of us have been left to die? How many lives have we saved while your people abandoned us? Are we not also in mourning? The jacaranda finally chimes in, its voice deep and velvety. You talk about your loss, one loss. We have roots that have lived through centuries of massacre. We carry every burned and broken tree as a wound on our barks, only a day old. You are a child, you know nothing of loss. Muta, infuriated and blinded by her own grief, spits on the ground, then walks out of the forest. A little history of Karua Forest Sister. In 1938, one of our sister caves was excavated. She's called the Njoro River Cave, and I am sure you are wondering how we know about her when she's so far away from us. We gossip through our roots. So there she was, opened by these people called the Likis, only for them to discover the 80 skeletons that were partially burned, surrounded by beautifully colored beads. We do not want to talk about the bones. We want to talk about the beads. Blues and purples and reds and greens with brown glinting hues reflected off of cowrie shells. This was the other bargain we made. You do not cut us to bury your dead, and we hide your ashes in our caves. We give you colors and you make beads, and we mix them with your ashes to protect your spirits. This is a bargain we made. Now see. November 2011. Muta is trying hard to see the trees, but they are losing their distinct features. The yellowwood leaves fall the same way the water pears do. Their colors, once emerald and fern, olive and viridian, become one version of green. This is the process of forgetting. Her mother is buried in a coffin in the Central Rift Valley, somewhere near the Njoro River Cave. When they are lowering the casket into the ground, Muta has nothing else to hold on to. Please, speak now, she whispers. I need you. She's greeted with silence. On the night that her mother is buried in a coffin, Muta dreams of leaves falling and disappearing into the ground. A little history of the Mothers of Freedom. In 1992, our sister park called Freedom became a site of revolution. This is a story about what happens when you keep your end of the bargain. Remember in 1989, when your farce of a leader wanted to build a Times Media complex on our sister park, Uhuru? But our advocate fought on our sister's behalf. She saved us, so we shared our secrets with her. Nakedness. This is how you confuse and break them. Strip the way your mothers did, and we will curse them for you. Are we not the givers of air, the keepers of balance, the storers of secrets? In most stories of lost and found, usually there is a thing, a totem, a tangible source of grounding for the story's holder to find what they have lost. Muta's mother did not leave her with anything but the names of the trees and their histories, words and stories, intangible things. So Muta is stuck and remains stuck for years. October 2013. 2 years after her mother's death, Muta meets Kemu. Kemu, who majors in botany and is always spewing facts about the region, habitat, or geological period of any given plant. She reminds Muta of her mother. They start taking walks through the city on Sundays, filling the time Muta would have spent in the forest when the trees were her companions. They tell each other memories they had forgotten in their own heads, remembering the past into the present. One particular Sunday, Kemu and Muta walk through Uhuru Park and sit on a bench near Freedom Corner with their chips maitu and 2 bottles of Coke. A breeze picks up and sends chills down Muta's spine. She closes her eyes as she shivers and then feels something brush against her shoulder. She hears it whistling as it slides down the front of her shirt and lands on her lap. She opens her eyes, an escaped leaf. The delicate wrinkles on its brown-yellow hue standing out. She shivers again. You okay? Kemu asks. Yeah, Muta answers. Kemu stays silent, recognizing Muta's ya as an unfinished sentence. You know that story of Wangari Maathai? Kemu chuckles. A random question, but not surprising considering how all over the place their conversations generally are. Which one? There's so many. Muta smiles. I'm thinking about the one that happened here in 1992 when Moi was president. Kemu rubs the back of her neck. You're going to have to refresh my memory. I've never been very good with history. Yeah, neither was I. Muta smiles as she remembers. But my mom taught me everything about Wangari Maathai. She was a little, well, obsessed. This particular story was when Moi unjustly arrested and detained political dissidents, and their mothers came and protested in the park. Kemu's eyes opened wide as she remembers. Oh, the one where the old women starved themselves? Hunger strike, Muta corrects. Kemu shrugs, same thing. She has already moved on. Muta purses her lips and exhales. My mother was there. Where? Here, Muta responds, gently holding up the little leaf between her thumb and her forefinger. In Uhuru Park, with the other mothers resisting cops and tear gas and threats of death. She was here. Muta opens her other palm wide, letting the leaf fall into it. She watches the breeze lift it up slightly, but it resists flight. It seems the little leaf has chosen her as its final destination. It was the first and only time she ever met Wangari Maathai in person, the woman who made her so much of who she was. Kemu clears her throat, but Muta goes on without registering. The part of the story I love is when they stripped. Can you imagine all those women being attacked by the violent goons of Moi? And then how do they retaliate? They strip. The leaf starts to whistle again, encouraging the spoken memory. Muta thinks she hears a whisper. She looks behind her and raises an eyebrow, stretching her ears. A large oak tree stares her down. Are you sure you're okay? Kemu asks again. Yeah, Muta responds after a few heartbeats. My mom told me this part that was not written in the history books. She said the goons' wooden batons turned on their keepers and started attacking them. There was so much commotion. No one really saw everything that was happening. Muta laughs softly. My mom would swear to me that the sticks had minds of their own and came alive after the women stripped. Kemu smiles. You seem to like that story a lot, huh? Muta shrugs. I guess. The thing is that my mother was pregnant with me at the time. She didn't know it yet, but she found out when she got home. She told the story to me 1,000 times. Sometimes I think I can remember it for myself. Not just the version of it that she told me. I remember the actual nakedness and vulnerability, the being bared in front of those men, but also the restlessness and the freedom and the curse that was being unleashed. It is Kemu's turn to raise her eyebrows. Muta remembers herself and smiles. Just words and stories. She chuckles and changes the topic of conversation. The next week, Muta goes to visit Karura Forest. The leaves are still, and the only things that whistle are the birds. The trees remain silent. A little history of the excavated caves in Karura Forest. In 1941, a white man came into our home uninvited. Of the things we allowed to be found, points, blades, burns, scrapers, crescents, cores, potsherds, an ostrich eggshell fragment, and some pig's teeth. 39 pieces of bottle glass, 1,726 stone tools made of obsidian and quartz, 22 Kikuyu glass beads, 19th and 20th century types, and one copper ring. There are more things, but not all of them must be named. The things that were never lost, we hid well. Us, we know how to keep our end of the bargain. November 2014. Muta has not been to Karura Forest in over a year. After the death, she would go persistently, straining her ears like she did when she was 13. She would cajole the fenna, beg the jacaranda, whisper to the fig, sing to the cedar, but even the moringa would not say a word, as if Muta had only imagined the years of conversation. Her visits went from once a week to once a month to once every 6 months. You cannot blame the girl. Nairobi is a moving city, distracting, always busy, so forgetful. It is easy to get lost in its transient nature. Besides, Muta had other things to worry about, like how to pay for the rest of university after her mother died, and how to cover some of the debts her father owed to not lose their house. Talking trees were a child's indulgence. When Muta was in her last year at uni, her professor sent out an email with a job opportunity. Content creator wanted, Greenbelt movement, founded by the late. Muta laughed when she saw it. Laughed because otherwise she would shake or cry. This history would not leave her alone. It was a starting position, but it paid, which was more than she could say for most other internships in Nairobi offered to just graduated students with no experience. She applied, hoping she would be rejected. When they called her to invite her for an interview, she sighed heavily into the phone. That was about a month after her last visit to Karura Forest. Now it has been 3 years since her mother died, 1 year since her last visit to the Karura Forest, and she is sitting in the Greenbelt office watching a Nobel Peace Prize speech celebrating 10 years since Professor Wangari Muta Maathai became the first African woman to win the prize. Muta cannot help but think of the word irony. Then, as Wangari is speaking on the screen, Muta hears something. Her attention is caught, but there is no pause or rewind in public viewings of this nature, so Muta tries to settle her thoughts. Her mind is stuck on this thing, and for the rest of the day, she cannot focus properly until she gets back home. And this is what Muta finds when she gets back home and rewatches up until minute 431 of Professor Wangari Maathai's Nobel lecture, where the beautiful dark woman in her spectacularly orange kitenge dress and head wrap says, "In my own community, the elders carried a staff called Vegi. Whenever there were disputing sides, that staff was placed between them. And as soon as the elders placed that Vegi or that staff between them, they stepped back, stopped fighting, and went to seek reconciliation. Many African communities have this heritage and tradition. When something as improbable as talking to trees is lost, then the rules of probability are also lost. So who is to say what can and cannot be found again? Who is to say if anything was ever really lost?" A little history of Karura Forest's advocate. Between 1994 and 1998, a total of 564 hectares were sold in secret. We watched you give us away in pieces in service of your gods, hiding your treachery behind national development. Do not think we do not know the names of the 64 companies you sold us to. We did not say the names out loud, but we whispered them until they were carried by the wind into the ears of our advocate. Us, we hold and release secrets. In 1999, you reminded us not all of you had forgotten. We watched the children of UON protest with the Freedom Mothers, our advocates. We will remind you of January 1999. We will remind you how blood was spilled when your dictator's goons came to remove the protesters. We will remember how our advocate kept your end of the bargain, how she replanted and reforested and diminished our anger, and how we decided then that we will still tell you our stories. December 2014. Muta? Her father's voice is softer than she expected, and Muta is rethinking this decision. She has not heard him in so long. She clears her throat and breathes hard into the phone. "Hi, Baba. This is a surprise." His words aren't slurred. Is he sober? Muta clears her throat again. I just wanted to say thanks for the package you sent me of Mama's things. It has been 2 years since he sent it. They both know it's a flimsy excuse. Yeah, he responds. I thought you would like them. Yeah, she says. I did. There is silence. And is that all hanging in the air? Muta bites her lip, a nervous habit. Are you keeping well? Me? Yes, yes. Good, good, good. Your Tata has been taking good care of me, and the Gishagi air has cleared my lungs. Your mother was right about one thing. Being with the land is healing to the soul. Heh, cities are just not built for being. Muta stops herself from clearing her throat a third time. That's good. She pauses for a moment. I guess I'll get right to it then. Do you know if mom had a specific wooden stick she kept somewhere? A stick? Yeah, yani mti. Muta, what are you going on about? Just answer the question, Baba. He sighs. No, I have not seen any stick that your mother left behind. If there was such a thing, it would probably be thrown away by your tata after the funeral. Muta groans and rubs her temples. They do not talk for a few seconds, and Baba asks, How are you keeping up? She does not answer. I thought you would come for the memorial service last month. We were sad to not have you. She will not play this game again. That grave, she responds tersely, is a farce, a disgrace to her memory. Baba sighs. Okay. Okay, she responds. They hang up. This is the first time in over a year that Muta returns to the forest. She looks specifically for the spot where the moringa talked to her when she was 13. She cannot find it. She finds a fever tree, but it is not the one Mama showed her. She thinks for a moment that she is lost, but the forest is smaller now than it was then, and she's bigger now than she was then, so she knows she cannot be. She sits by a cave in the middle of the forest. She stays quiet. She can hear the delicate gushing of the small waterfall. This time she does not beg or cajole or cry. She's still grieving. The forest is always grieving. They both grieve in silence. Muta is not stuck now, but she has accepted her forgetting. She goes back and gets lost in the movement of the city, putting aside Mathai's words, her father's voice, her speculative imaginings. This is not a difficult thing to do in the city. Nairobi is a moving city after all. A little history of loss. We are tired of telling you our story. Leave us alone now. Let us grieve ourselves. September 2022. It has been 11 years since Wangari M. Maathai passed away, and Mutai is sitting in the office planning a memorial festival. They are to invite several artists in Nairobi scene. Mutai is working for a big environmentalist NGO now, and they are pitching the memorial service as part of a series of feminist advocacy-centered events, which is why predominantly female acts would be better. She calls up Kemu, who took up her old job at the Greenbelt movement. By the way, I found something that you might find interesting, Kemu says just before they end the call. Mutai is still distracted, putting notes on her calendar. She won't be able to make the meeting with Patricia Kihora because she has to take Nani, her daughter, for a checkup. A baton, a wooden baton, bent in on itself, Kemu says. Uh-huh. Muta, are you even listening? It was found at her home office when she transferred to the Greenbelt when Moy was trying to shut it down. Now Muta starts to pay attention. Immediately it was brought to the office, Kemu continues. I looked at it and thought of you. Remember the version of the Freedom Corner protest you told us about? Her voice is getting higher with every passing word. The one your mother told you, how after the woman stripped, the wooden batons turned in on themselves, Muta says with her friend in unison. Exactly, Kemu says excitedly. And then they started beating the cops who were harassing the women as if they had grown their own minds. Muta has not thought about this in a long time. Where is it now? Kemu poses. Of course, no one believed the story that I gave them, but everyone agreed that if it was important enough to be hidden in Wangari Maathai's home office, then it must have some significance. Where is it now? Muta asks again. In the office, but I'm going to try and get it to the event. Muta's mind is running, but it is almost 5 o'clock, and given Kiambu Road traffic, she must leave now if she wants to get home in time to tuck Nani, her daughter, in. Okay, she says. And when she gets home, she puts her daughter to bed and makes herself a cup of tea, then moves into her study room and rummages through old boxes of books and papers. Muta thinks about the Degi, a peace staff. November 2030. It is Nani's 13th birthday, and she wants a picnic with her mom. Well, that's not all. She wants to go to watch a movie with her friends, but first, a picnic with her mom. Guka has been sick, so he moved in with them. And since then, mom has been so stressed, and Nani knows her mother feels she's becoming distant. Her mother is terrified that turning 13 means that they will somehow move from mother and daughter to strangers. For as long as Nani can remember, her mother has been pouring herself into her work, leading conservation campaigns across the country and protests against deforestation. She tells her mother, "So you told me Shosho took you when you were my age. Karura is just here, Ata. Our little Muta is grown now, and there are wrinkles around her eyes when she smiles. No matter how much she tries not to be too soft, she knows she will indulge her daughter." Yes, but that was different. We didn't have all these fancy virtual forests like you do now. Nani rolls her eyes. "Mom, it's not like this is the first time I've been to Karura. You don't have to throw shade. Like a tree," Muta interrupts her daughter and laughs at her own joke. The truth is, she has avoided the forest since the last time she was there almost 10 years ago. She had managed to convince Kemu to let her take the wooden stick home after the memorial festival commemorating Professor Wangari Maathai. To be returned, she had promised, knowing even then that it was a lie. She had prepared herself, reading up on Vegi rituals, and planned her trip to the forest. This time she got truly and thoroughly lost, whispering as she walked. Then she sat down, held a stick up with her palms outward, and aired her thoughts. "I am angry that you abandoned me." She's not sure if she was talking to the trees or her mother. "I am disappointed in myself for hoping for more." The leaves started to whistle, softly at first. "I am disillusioned with this country as you taught me to be." The whistling got louder. "I am sad and alone, a motherless daughter." The whistles moved to whispers, and a cedar branch shook behind her. She did not stop. "Please, please." She laid down the stick. "I just want rest." And us? It was a small fig tree behind her that asked, "Do we not also want rest?" Tears fell and wet Muta's cheeks. "I can help you. Talk to me and let me help you." The whispers picked up, then receded, a cascade in the air. "You already forgot us, like every other human. Cut us down, betrayed us, forgot us, leave what is ours and go." "Peace," Muta pleaded. "I have not forgotten you." "Then show us." It was the Moringa, always the healer. Reconciliation requires more than words. The rest of the forest hushed, and Muta placed the folded button on the ground, then stood up and left. That was then, nearly 10 years ago, when Nani was a toddler and the world was still processing the slowing down of time. And this is now, when Nani is 13, and Muta is taking her for a picnic in the middle of the forest for her birthday. And they stumble upon a moringa tree, and Muta smiles and she starts telling Nani a little history about how it is one of the fastest growing drought-resistant trees. And more than that, it is medicinal, a survivor and a healer. And then Nani hears a laugh and a chortle. "Like your mother," it whispers. Thank you.
Thank you, Shingai. That was gorgeous. Just gorgeous.
Thank you so much for listening.
It is our pleasure. And everyone, I've dropped a link to her upcoming novella, to the cover reveal for it. If you have any other links you like better, Shingai, feel free to drop those as well. But I backed the Kickstarter, so. So in between stories, it is our habit to take a deep breath and sort of let the first one soak in. And that lets us start fresh for the new one. So Nancy Jane Moore is the author of Locus recommended science fiction novel, The Weave, and recently out, I think you said June, fantasy novel For the Good of the Realm. Please hold that up when the camera's on you too. Both published by Seattle's Aqueduct Press. Her other books include the novella Changeling and the collection Conscientious Inconsistencies. Her short fiction has appeared in a number of anthologies and in magazines ranging from Lady Churchill's Rosebud Wristlet to the National Law Journal, which I usually think of as nonfiction, but maybe you can tell me a little about that sometime. In addition to writing, she holds a 4th degree black belt in Aikido and teaches empowerment self-defense. A native Texan who spent many years in Washington, D.C., she now lives in Oakland, California with her sweetheart, 2 cats, and an ever-growing murder of crows. Welcome, Nancy.
Oh, thank you very much for having me again. And here's the cover of For the Good of the Realm.
Oh, it's so
Which,
pretty.
let me see how close I can get it.
Yep.
It's got witches and swordswomen, and it owes a great debt to Alexander Dumas. And nothing I read tonight is going to be anything like it. So, you can take that for what it's worth. I seem to be one of those writers who jumps around a lot, and so I'm doing something different. I kept looking through my stuff, and most of the short stories I write are either very short, flash fiction, or they're 7,000 words, 10,000 words, or they're not revised enough yet to read to anybody else. So I come up with 4 flash fiction to read, and they come to about the length of a 3,500 word short story. So
wonderful. That works perfectly.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's just the way it seemed to work out. The first one is the only one that's a dystopia. I try not to write dystopias, but it was inspired because I took a welding class, and I made this, which is meant to be a spaceship. It's a little, I'm not really a welder or much of an artist, but I had a great time putting this together, and that inspired this particular story. So it's called The Last Starship. The spaceship stands in the field we used to grow hay before the aquifer dried up, a tall cone of rusted metal coming to a point at the top. From one side, it still looks whole despite the oxidation, but the scorched holes in the other side betray its fate. The launch happened long enough back that newcomers mistake the ship for a silo, or the kind of futuristic house dreamed up in the 1950s. But those of us who've lived here a while remember when Luce and Alicia and that group from Seattle they took in after the tsunami started to build it. One of them, Ayana was her name, had worked at Boeing. The grape and almond crops had failed 3 years running due to too little water and too much heat. Almost everyone you ran into at the post office and the grocery store talked about leaving, but where would they go? True, things were bad in the Central Valley, but the coastlines were sinking into the ocean. We had refugees from the Bay Area as well as Seattle. Go online when the internet was working and you'd hear the same story from no matter where. Too little water here, too much water there, crazy storms, heat everywhere. Someone, not Ayana, started talking about leaving the planet. She told them she'd never built a rocket ship. Her job had been supervising the installation of engines on 797s. But someone found the specifications for the early moonshot rockets on an archived NASA website. In the end, Ayana agreed to take the lead in building the thing because she was the only person who understood the specs. They scavenged material from tractors and trucks, anything metal they could find that no one had a use for anymore. The outside of the ship was built from the prefab metal buildings once used to store tools and crops. Obtaining fuel took more effort. Luce, who'd been laid off from her nursing job because the hospital in Manteca was shutting down, talked to some of the men who were hauling off medical supplies. It took most of her severance pay, but the hospital's store of liquid oxygen ended up in the barn where they were building the ship. They combined it with jet fuel Alicia's cousin stole from half a dozen small airports. He'd serviced fighters in the Air Force, knew how to look official when he drove in with a tanker that drained the tanks instead of refilling them. It was a gala day when they took off. The people who weren't going gathered around as the dozen making the trip filed into the ship. "We'll come back for you once we're settled," Luce yelled as they shut the door. It took off just the way it was supposed to, just like those ships in the old clips of the space program. And for a minute, everyone believed it was going to happen. Alicia and Luce and Ayana and Alicia's cousin and the others would build a new home somewhere out in space. Maybe they would come back for us or for our great-great-grandchildren, if people are still around at the time when we might expect our great-great-grandchildren to live. And then the ship exploded into flames and came crashing back down tail first, hitting the ground hard and sinking a few yards down into the baked earth. The fire was raging out of control. The volunteer fire department did what they could with their one tank of foam and some truckloads of dirt. They knew water would have no effect on a fire like that, so they didn't waste our most precious resource on a futile gesture. No one made it out. They say that Ayana never expected it to fly, that she knew it was too jerry-rigged to work. But in the end, she had to try. There wasn't anything for anyone here. Still isn't. No, we don't know where they thought they were going. Even if it hadn't blown up, even if they could have flown fast enough to break gravity, that ship wasn't going to go anywhere that had water and dirt and a way to build a new life from scratch. They didn't have enough juice to get farther than the asteroid belt. No way they were going to get out of the solar system and find another planet like Earth, only not used up. Ayana knew that. Maybe they all did. Maybe it just didn't feel like suicide if they called it leaving. So now I'll stop being depressing. I'm going to read what is maybe my favorite flash fiction that I've written. The only thing that's out, and there's an Audible edition of a book called Flashes of Illumination out there by me, and it's in that, but there's not a print version of it anywhere. I keep trying it on reprints, so maybe someday. This is called Quiz. 1, you're hiking through Virginia on the Appalachian Trail in mid-October. The leaves are turning, the aggressive red of the maples outshining the golds and browns. The air smells clean and fresh, and you can hear the geese as they pass over on their way south. So you let yourself think you're really deep in the wilderness instead of a mile or two off Skyline Drive, where a steady stream of cars and campers is conveying thousands of people to view the fall colors. At the top of a steep hill, you stop, ostensibly to admire the view, but actually to catch your breath. There, just to your right, under a towering oak, sits a well-stuffed easy chair covered in rich brown leather. It comes complete with a matching ottoman and a side table containing a cut glass decanter, a brandy snifter, and a plate of chocolate truffles. Next to the plate is something that resembles the television remote control. Do you, A, pretend the chair isn't there and hustle down the hill to continue your hike? B, pull out your cell phone and call the park rangers to come immediately remove this item that does not belong in the National Forest? C, sit down on the chair, eat one of the truffles, noticing the rich dark flavor of the chocolate, the hint of almond, pour a little brandy into the snifter and lean back to enjoy the view. And then, after a few minutes, pick up the remote control and wonder what might happen if you punch the channel selector. 2, you're walking down the street in the business district of a major American city, wearing your dress for success business suit, black, but with a daring red blouse, carrying a briefcase, headed for a meeting in which you must make a major presentation complete with PowerPoint slides. You come to a small gap between 2 towering office buildings and see not the expected alley with garbage cans and perhaps a homeless person or two sleeping in cardboard boxes, but a tree, trunk perhaps 5 or 6 feet in diameter, extending as high as the skyscrapers around it. Big, thick limbs come off the tree every few feet, growing out to touch the buildings before redirecting skyward. You look up and see several tree houses among the branches. The lowest one is a simple platform, like a child might build in a backyard tree. But higher up, you see one painted red and decorated with Chinese symbols in gold, and another covered with shingles that appears to go up several stories. Several boards hammered into the trunk provide a crude staircase up to the first platform. Do you, A, pretend it isn't there and hurry off to get to your business meeting on time? B, pull out your cell phone and call the mayor's office to get someone to come and do something about this at once? C, put down your briefcase, take off your pumps, and climb up the steps to the Chinese platform, finding a pot of freshly made green tea and a device that looks like it might be an electronic version of an abacus. Sit on a cushion, pour yourself a cup of the tea, and pick up the abacus. 3, your sister is hosting the family for Thanksgiving at her home in the suburbs. She's stuck at the kitchen with your mother, her mother-in-law, 3 aunts, and an uncle, meaning you'd just be in the way. The rest of the adults are yelling at football games on television. The teenagers are in the basement playing video games, and the younger kids are running through the house playing a game that seems to be more about screaming than anything else. You slip out to go for a walk in the brisk November air. Your sister's street is a block of almost new brick homes with large, well-tended front yards and trim all painted the same basic white. At the end of the block is a playground containing the usual mix of swing sets and slides. But in one corner stands a rocket ship made of dull gray steel pointed toward the sky. It looks as if it belongs on the cover of a 1950s science fiction magazine. There is a rickety set of stairs leading to a door in the side of the ship. Do you, A, pretend it isn't there and walk quickly back to your sister's house to watch the football game? B, pull out your cell phone and call the police to demand that someone come and remove this dangerous object from the playground at once? C, climb into the rocket, find a spacesuit, put it on, sit down in front of a control panel, fasten your seatbelt, and study a complicated keyboard with any number of levers and switches and a big red button. Results. If you mostly answered A, just move along, nothing to see here. If you mostly answered B, you are to be congratulated for taking the time out of your busy life to fix all the problems you see around you. Though it's pretty obvious why so many people think you're an officious busybody. If you mostly answered C, clearly your mind is not bothered by things that ought not be. Enjoy your excursions, but be forewarned. If you change the channel on the remote control, you might find yourself in the Amazon instead of on the Appalachian Trail. If you make adjustments to the abacus, you will find a completely different city when you climb back down the tree. Someone with your willingness to try new things has probably already guessed what happens if you punch the red button. Obviously, I continue to be obsessed with spaceships that look like they ought to be on the covers of Analog from a long time ago. Just like the idea. That's what a spaceship ought to look like. Okay, so this one is in my collection, Conscientious Inconsistencies, that's been out since 2008 and can be found used in various places. It was a limited edition. PS Publishing does that, these limited editions. So perhaps somebody will stumble across it. This is called 31 Rules for Fulfilling Your Destiny, and it's a story in aphorisms. And I will read you the rules. You are blessed with a destiny, but it will not be given to you as a matter of right. It must be dreamed, desired, sought after, fought for, understood, and accepted. It is likely you will fail to fulfill your destiny. Nevertheless, you must live as if you will succeed, risking everything: life, health, money, love. Along your path, you will find many teachers and mentors. Some will choose you, Others will ignore you until you demand their guidance. Listen carefully to these teachers, but remember their destinies are not yours. When the time comes, leave them behind. Other people will try to block your destiny. The most difficult obstacles will be presented not by your enemies, but by your family, who will want you to follow the location of their dreams, acquire the comfortable life, and provide them with grandchildren. An ill-timed pregnancy can keep you from attaining your destiny. War is one of the greatest evils created by humankind. It is also a crucible in which you can forge yourself to reach your destiny. When you set out to follow the way of the warrior, do not disguise yourself as a man. The way of the warrior is not restricted to men. The male way of warriorship has been defined for thousands of generations. It is possible that there is a female way of warriorship. Think on these things, but not when your enemies are attacking. A warrior protects the people from the monsters, be they human, animal, magical, alien, imaginary, or even the people themselves. You must learn to fight without giving in to fear, but if you refuse to acknowledge fear, it will betray you at the most inauspicious moment. You must master the physical arts of war, but if you refuse to learn strategy and rely on fighting ability alone, you will not survive to find your destiny. There are times when killing is necessary. These times are more infrequent than has been commonly assumed. There are times when saving the life of your enemy is required. These times are more numerous than anyone has ever suspected. Killing is not the only method for defeating your enemies. The most successful way to defeat enemies is to make them your friends. The lessons of war will prove useful as you move into politics, but the subtleties will change. You must learn new rules of engagement to survive the political life. Behave with honor, treat everyone with respect, trust no one. Betrayal occurs more often in politics than in war. The time will come when all the choices before you require breaking your word. Make the decision that the situation demands, not the one that allows you to avoid betraying a friend. A person of power is obligated to the people she leads, not the people she loves. No matter how many monsters you defeat, more will appear. Good judgment comes from experience. Experience comes from bad judgment. You can make all the right choices and still lose badly. And no one ever makes all the right choices. When everything that matters in your life has been destroyed and ground to dust, you have two choices. You can die or you can begin anew. Only you can decide which you will do. Approach rebuilding your destiny with humility. The truly humble cannot be humiliated. You will find it necessary to refight battles you thought already won. Do so without complaint. When reached, your destiny may look very different than it did when you first began your journey. Do not be deceived. It is still your destiny. No matter how powerful you become, you will still be forced to make difficult choices, to protect yourself from intrigues, and to do battle with monsters. Fulfilling your destiny will not make you safe or comfortable. It may not even make you happy. Do not let the magicians or the scientists make you immortal. You are human, and humans die. Any effort to live past your natural time will destroy your soul, and with it, your humanity. Do not be deceived by those who would make you a god. If taking the name of God is a good strategic decision, accept the title humbly, but do not believe it yourself. Godhood is not your destiny. You will not know if what you build survives your death, but you must wield power as if it will. Death ends your story. What comes after belongs to someone else. Break all rules, including these. Yes, someone has just noted in there the refighting battles you thought were already won. Yes, I've been thinking about that a lot lately. following the news, unfortunately. There were things in that story I thought, well, I'd write that differently now. And, and there were others that are like, oh, wow, I think I know the truth of that a lot more than I knew when I wrote it. Okay, so the last story is in the Cascadia Subduction Zone, which is a magazine put out by Aqueduct Press. It's mostly a literary journal, but they publish a little flash fiction and poetry. If you're looking for a market for your flash or your poetry, and especially if it's got a feminist take to it, they pay a tiny bit of money, but they pay about the same as what poetry and flash fiction is going to pay anywhere. So I recommend it as a market. I don't know how much as with many things, there's not been as many issues during the pandemic. So I don't know how many more issues they'll bring out, but hopefully there will be some more. This is called the canonization of Junipero Serra. And for those of you who don't live in California, Junipero Serra was one of the Spanish missionaries that set up all the missions and was running around trying to convince all the indigenous Californians to become Christians or to become slaves, or sort of to become a combination of those things. And he was, in fact, recently canonized by the Pope. This is my reaction to that. A loud bell startled Junipero out of a deep sleep. He stumbled from his pallet and patted the wall for the response button. "The Almighty One wants to see you," a tinny voice said. "What for?" But he got no response. He pulled on his friar's robes. Most here did not bother with clothes, but he always covered his body, no matter the temperature. When he opened the door of his cell, a bright pathway glowed before him. He stepped onto it. In moments, or in eternity, he found himself in the audience chamber. The Almighty One sat behind a table in a simple wooden chair. Next to the table stood a being dressed all in white, glowing so brightly that the darkest corners of the room were illuminated. That must be an angel, Junipero thought, for all that the being had dark skin and long, straight black hair. "Junipero," said the one, "the angel Balthazar has brought us a message. It seems Pope Francis has declared you a saint." Junipero had never heard of the angel Balthazar, and he did not recognize the name of the Pope. He'd had trouble keeping up. But the name indicated he might even be a fellow Franciscan. Then he realized the true import of the words, sainthood. He'd never been sure the odd things that had happened were miracles, though he knew the church had always appreciated his missionary work and his zeal. "I am not worthy," he said, because that was the sort of thing one should say, not because he doubted he deserved this honor. "Indeed, you are not. We are in agreement. But holy decrees cannot be undone. You are heretofore Saint Junipero." The angel Balthazar shuddered. "Then I will be leaving here," Junipero said, feeling a small surge of hope, the first he had allowed himself in the centuries. Was it centuries? He had been in this place. The Almighty One began to laugh, and the angel Balthazar smiled. "Leave? Oh, no, absolutely not. You are mine for eternity. It was as was decreed from the beginning. But the Pope has named me a saint, and the Pope is infallible." The Almighty One laughed harder. The angel Balthazar said, "Nothing about this changes your circumstances. It is a title, nothing more." "But surely the Pope could not have made such a declaration without the approval of the most omnipotent one." "True," the angel replied. "The one who cannot be named allowed this designation, but they issued no reprieve for you. Your massive sins outweigh your so-called miracles." "Then why do this to me? Is it supposed to give me some satisfaction to know my legacy on earth belies my current state?" "Perhaps it is to increase your suffering," the angel said before disappearing. "What you do not understand, Saint Junipero," Lucifer said in a tone that could be called gentle, "is that the all-knowing one, who, after all, set the angel of light to rule over hell, has a devilish sense of humor." Oh, too many stories, but
No, that was perfect.
it was fun.
Daniel, what a lovely collection of stories we've had tonight.
Boy, I'll say.
Yeah.
Just,
Oh,
and some themes stood out, definitely trees, definitely power and people in places it was not originally perceived.
Hmm.
I really liked the play between all of those.
Yeah, we don't plan this at all, by the way.
No, and I don't think that you two knew each other before tonight, did you?
no, and now I have to look for Shingai's book.
Right.
And it's like, oh, good, something new, someone new.
I think the trees did it to us.
Really
Yeah.
wonderful work, both of you. Thank you so much for
Yes,
joining.
thank you both. Well, this has been a really uplifting evening. I feel like the air is cleaner after these stories, and that's a wonderful feeling. Next week, we're probably going to be scared because we have James Chambers and Wendy Ann Wagner reading. Yeah, also awesome, but scarier. You can keep up to date about upcoming authors at storyhour2020.com. And you can see any programs you may have missed at the Story Hour page on Facebook. Please do let your friends know that they don't actually need a Facebook account to log in. They just need the link. We wouldn't let you get a Facebook account. So Shingai, Nancy, thank you both so much for sharing your stories with us tonight.
Yay.
Thank
That
you
was-
so much for having us.
Yeah, I agree. I'm very grateful. Nancy, I'm definitely going to be checking out all of your work as well. I laughed so much.
Oh, that's beautiful. Thank you both so much. My wonderful co-host, Daniel Marcus, thank you so much for bringing us Story Hour in the first place. And all of you who are joining us here on Zoom, on Facebook, all of you who are watching later, thank you so much for being part of Story Hour with us. Good night.
Thanks, everybody. Good night.